Hello everyone, welcome back to Series 4 of the GBA Lightbulb Sessions. The Great British Entrepreneur Awards, in association with BT Skills for Tomorrow, have designed a free live stream series of Lightbulb Sessions to support small businesses and entrepreneurs with insightful and advice-driven sessions, featuring some of the UK's brilliant entrepreneurial minds to illuminate your path to entrepreneurial success. You can find out more about BT Skills for Tomorrow by heading to their website at www.bt.com/skills for tomorrow, or by clicking on the link in the comment section. In this session, we are joined by Small Business Commissioner Liz Barkley and founder of Mazuma Accountants, Lucy Cohen. Liz and Lucy will highlight how late payments prevent small businesses from achieving growth targets and how adopting digital tools can help small businesses to manage their money, and it'll free up time to chase invoices. There is an opportunity to ask questions during this session. If you have a question you'd like to ask, you can pop this in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer these towards the end of the session. Please note there is a poll at the end of the session today, and all answers will be anonymous. And with that, I'll pass over to Lucy Cohen.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chloe, for that introduction. I've leapt in at the last minute to host this session, but so bear with me. But I do enjoy the sound of my own voice, so I'm hoping this is going to go okay. So I want to say, first of all, a big thank you to Liz Barkley, who's joining us this morning. Let's just start this session off then with introductions. So Liz, tell us about yourself and what you do.
Small Business Commissioner since the 1st of July. And Lucy, you and I have talked before, so I know we can both talk.
We'll be fine.
You may have to cut me off if I go on too long. But the Small Business Commissioner's role is to help small businesses if they are in dispute with their bigger customers over payments. So we have a payment dispute resolution service. And when we talk about small suppliers, we're talking about small companies with, or small firms with fewer than 50 employees. When we talk about bigger customers, we're talking about bigger firms with more than 50 employees. So it's quite a tight definition there. But we will always help any small supplier if they have got questions about the payments, the practices that they're encountering with their bigger customers. We also administer the Prompt Payment Code, and the Prompt Payment Code is there to encourage businesses to sign up, to commit, to pay at least 95% of their small suppliers within 30 days. So that is our narrow remit. Our broad remit is to get advice and information and sources of help out to small businesses around the UK, and to help change the payment culture that people talk about, which has led to small suppliers pleading for better payment terms. So there you go. If you've got a payment dispute, give us a shout.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you, Liz. And for those that don't know me, my name is Lucy Cohen. I'm one of the co-founders of Mazuma. So we were the UK's first subscription-based accountancy service, and we specifically service the micro and small business market. So the issue of payments, seeing debtors on balance sheets, we are very, very familiar with and understand what a, make or break situation it often is for small businesses, especially when you've got large orders of stocks or supplies or staffing involved. Not getting paid on time can be absolutely crippling. Fantastic. So introductions done then. Let's have a little chat about late payments, because I've been running a business for 15 years now, and this topic of late payments is still pervasive. We're still talking about this and have been the whole time. I also, prior to working for myself, worked for bigger businesses, and so I've seen the payment practices from the other side and the kind of rules that get put around payment practices as the corporate policy for adopting it. So let's kind of talk about, why does this issue of late payments exist? Is it really a case of the big businesses being the pantomime villain here, and not wanting to pay their bills on time, or is it something else?
It's all sorts of reasons, and I would say that some of it may be down to wanting to hang on to your cash. But if you are a small business, if you're a small supplier, as you said, it can be life and death for your business, not getting your payments through quickly. And I think part of the problem might be the phrase late payments, because it's been used to cover a multitude of sins. and actually not, the biggest problem is not overdue invoices. Yes, there are invoices that were due to be paid at the end of July that still haven't been paid. We know that. But a lot of it is down to extended payment terms. So customers coming along and saying, you do the work for me, I will take delivery of that work, and then I will pay you in 60, 90, 120. Days. I've even seen 360 days after you've delivered the work. Now, for me, that's like you walking into the butcher, ordering and collecting your Christmas turkey and saying, I'll pay you at Easter. That butcher isn't going to be there by then, because the butcher can't afford to wait for the customers to pay in 4 or 5 months. So, you know, we really need to address that. And I think we need to help small businesses to understand that they are the talent. Small firms are the talent, they're the expertise, they're the skills. And if they're not there next time a big customer wants them, guess what? It costs quite a lot of money to go out and find replacements for that talent. Therefore, you have got some power in this game. You can push back and say, no, I'm really sorry, I can't wait 120 days to be paid.
And I actually think that power dynamic you've just referenced there is a really good example of why this late payments thing exists. First of all, I mean, I've seen it the other hand when I work for a bigger company, their payment terms are 90 days. And you see small suppliers come in and they ring up and after 60 days and go, well, I haven't paid me yet. I haven't got any money. We're like, well, sorry, you're on the 90-day payment run. You'll be paid. And even then, it's not necessarily exactly 90 days. It's a case of going, well, you'll be on the payment run that exists at that 90-day mark. So it could be 97 days, and it could be, you know, nearly 100 days depending when it falls in that month. So that's something quite interesting.
It's the uncertainty, Lucy. The uncertainty is the killer here. Because if you know that you're going to be paid in even 90 days, 120 days, then you can plan for that. And you can think about how you manage your cash flow. But one of somebody I've been doing some work with said to me the other day, I was paid on average 66 days. And I got a piece of work coming in. The payment terms were 120 days. And I said, I can't accept that. I was brave enough, he said, to say, for the first time ever, I can't accept that. Because I will be bust. I do not have the cash flow. I do not have the reserves to see me through for 4 months. And the big firm said, oh, we never thought about that. Let's see what we can do. Well, I think it underlines the fact that bigger customers sometimes do not understand how small businesses work. But the bigger customer came back and said, how about if we pay you in 45 days? To which the answer was, yes, I can deal with that. The cash flow I can manage my cash flow. But he said, interestingly, he's now paid on average 33 days because he's had the confidence to follow that process through with lots of other customers. And I think this is really important.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is understanding the power dynamic, the perception of that power dynamic maybe isn't what you think it is. You know, if all small businesses said, I'm not accepting 120-day payment terms or 90-day payment terms, then big business has to move to accommodate them, because ultimately this is it's a supply chain issue. So you need to have your suppliers, giving you the things that you're going to sell on or use. And if you stop paying them, they're not going to come back to you.
Well, we can see that.
Yes.
We can see that happen now. And I think this has brought it into very clear focus. But, a lot of bigger firms are holding on to cash because they're investing in things. They're buying plant and machinery. They're doing development, etc. And they want to keep the cash as long as they possibly can. So they're using you as a bank almost, in order that they can carry on doing the things that they want to do in order to develop and grow. But it doesn't necessarily occur to them that by not paying you on time, you can't develop and grow. You can't create jobs at local level. And this is all part of the levelling up agenda that we need to address. You can't level up if your small firms don't have the income coming in order to create the jobs that they need to create it. And they are the talent. They are the people who will innovate, take the risk, create the jobs, and ultimately drive recovery, but only if they've got the cash to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue of how long has this been, how long has the issue of payments and late payments of small businesses been around? I'm going to take a step here and say that actually we've seen this, we've seen the mechanisms by which it should be able to change accelerate, specifically over the last 5 years with technology. If you go back to ye olde days, when people couldn't view their bank accounts in real time and had to write checks to pay things, and there was a clearing time and all that sort of stuff, things like 30-day payment terms or even 60 days, if you're going to be generous, maybe made a little bit more sense. It gave people enough time to deal with you write the invoice, post the invoice, receive the invoice, process the invoice, wait for the bank statement, all that kind of manual stuff. I just don't. So it's been an issue, I think, for a very long time, but I don't think there's an excuse for it anymore.
I think it's been an issue since probably the 80s. There probably isn't an excuse for it anymore, but can you imagine the scenario? You go along and you say to your financial controller, I want several £100,000 to update our payment processes. And the financial controller says, why? And you say, so that we can pay people quicker. The financial controller says, actually, we've got other things that we want to do with that money. And so there's still a whole raft of businesses out there that haven't updated the processes, and the processes still do take more than 30 days. And
That's
it's
amazing.
probably the approval processes that can take ages. And of course, somebody's on holiday, somebody else goes on holiday, and the processes take a long time. But the other problem, I think, is that those bigger customers don't tell their smaller suppliers what the process is.
Yes.
So you think you've got a piece of work. Okay, I'll send the invoice to the person who's given me the piece of work. Well, that's not going to work because it's not them who makes the payments. So then it goes halfway around the building in order to reach the right person. You need to know, who do I send the invoice to?
Yeah.
When do I send it? What are the payment terms we've agreed? What information needs to go on there? And when will I be paid? Because again, it's that uncertainty.
And I think that something you've mentioned there about payment terms that we've agreed is quite interesting, because I see this a lot with small businesses. Is they'll get a contract for a large business, they have their standard invoicing, which says immediate, 7 days, 30 days. We advise as soon as possible. Get it quickly, but ultimately they send it in, and then they'll have the large company come back and go, yeah, no, I know it says 30 days on your invoice. Those are your terms, but our terms are 90 days, so you have to wait for us. And that power there, you can't force someone to give you money, even if you're owed it. The legal recourse for that is huge. So how would you go about, we're kind of going off script here a little bit, but as a small business, how would you go about having that conversation and agreeing contractually payment terms between parties that suit both, especially if you've got maybe a behemoth of a business that goes, well, our terms are 90 days, take it or leave it. So how do you approach that conversation?
Well, sometimes, it comes back to what I said right at the beginning. You are the talent, and you've got to have the confidence to realize that. They need you, possibly more than you need them, to be honest. So you've got to stand up for yourself and be prepared to have the difficult conversation. Now, we don't do that because we're scared of losing the work.
Yeah, or scared to go to somebody else. Yeah,
exactly. And somebody said, somebody phoned me up the other week. She said, I had a piece of work. I said, I need to be paid in 14 days. Everything was agreed. I put in the invoice with the PO number on it. The payment department said we pay in 90. I said, okay, we can help you with that. That's what we're here for. Let me get my team to help you with that. She said, no. She said, I want the next piece of work coming down the pipeline, so I don't want to rock the boat.
And this is it, yeah.
That's the problem that we've got. People don't want to have those tough conversations.
Yeah.
So it's about having the tough conversations at the start, and then you know what you're, you know that you're contacting that firm to say, the payment is due on X. Is it going to come through on time? Can you tell me when I can expect the payment to reach my bank account? And you're chasing it up right from the beginning, and you have a process in place. It's hard to do. It's really tough. But honestly, as somebody else said to me the other day, you've got to be tough enough to be able to walk away and say, you know what? I can't wait for 4 months to be paid.
Yeah.
You wouldn't ask your employees to wait 4 months to be paid, or they would be evicted from their tenancy. They'd be behind with their mortgage. The same applies to me. My mental health will suffer.
Yeah.
And honestly, we have found in the office of the Small Business Commissioner that if we have those kind of conversations with a bigger customer, they say, I never thought about it like that. Let me process this payment as quickly as I can.
Yeah.
And there is a real lack of understanding of the needs of smaller businesses in this supply situation. So we've got to get those messages out there, and we've got to help as much as we possibly can to get that into people's understanding. So it is really difficult to have.
So do we think here, either consciously or subconsciously, the problem here is is either on purpose or not on purpose because of a lack of understanding, is that the big businesses are using small businesses to cash flow them.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
They are, but not all of them necessarily set out to do that. And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Some of it is incompetence.
Yeah.
Some of it is out of date processes.
Yeah.
Some of it is complete lack of understanding. Some
Yeah.
of it will be on purpose. But the other question that big businesses need to ask themselves is, if they are withholding payments and imposing late, long payment terms, then somebody somewhere, an investor probably, is going to look at that behavior and say, are there fundamental financial problems underlying this? Are they doing it to hold cash because they're in trouble? Investors don't like to see that kind of behavior. They want ethical companies that are doing really well. This is a reputational issue here for your company. And actually, the question I always want to know the answer to is, does the chair know? Do the non-exec directors on your board know? Because that's where we need to drive the culture change from. There needs to be a culture change that says, I'm not going to sit on a board with this kind of behavior in the company. I want to see things change. And so those conversations are beginning to be had.
That's
and I
excellent.
think I'm hearing an awful lot of that discussion going on, which is really
excellent. So what, I mean, you mentioned briefly there, obviously, cash flow, mental health, but in real life, so you're a small business and you're a little bit scared to have that conversation. Why is it so important to have this? What are the impacts for small businesses in not having that conversation, or putting up with, or being paid late, for want of a better term? What is the impact to small business?
Well, we know, and we've seen a lot of figures around, but just let me give you a few of the figures that I've pulled out this morning. And it's a question of you being paid late, obviously, which is the first impact, which means that you can't actually invest, you can't grow your business, you can't think about where you're going to get the next plant and machinery from, and how you're going to create the jobs that you want to create. But and then there is the emotional human side of all of that. But BACS, for instance, do a lot of research into this, and they say that a quarter of small business owners, they stress even if they're not at work. 17% say that payment delays undermine their own confidence in their ability to run a business. More than half of firms report being paid late, and that's higher than 2015. They have there's a total payment bill outstanding of around about 23 billion, and that's up from 13 billion in 2018. And late payments then have that knock-on effect. A third say that they have to rely on overdrafts to see them through. Overdrafts are expensive. A quarter set their own salaries aside, don't pay themselves because they have to have the cash to keep the business going. An eighth say they have difficulty paying their employees, and of course that has a ripple effect in local communities. And a 12th are struggling to pay their business bills. So all of that has an impact, quite apart then from the sleepless nights, and we all know what that does. Sleepless nights, thinking about how am I going to pay my household bills? Am I going to be able to pay the rent? Ultimately, it leads to homelessness. It leads to relationship breakdown. It leads to mental health problems.
It's something that we definitely see in small businesses. The difference in so when you're burdened as a small business on the kind of psychological side, when you're burdened with worrying about cash all the time, it takes up such a large part of your brain, that constant worry, that you're unable then to kind of flex that innovation muscle and be fully present in kind of building your business. So in terms of kind of that being another impact, you're not that constant pressure of not knowing where the money's going to come from next really impacts your ability to drive your business forward, because you're constantly kind of not just treading water, but kind of trying to stay afloat, really trying to battling that current. It's really, really hard.
Yes. But even if you have good ideas coming through, you're thinking, what's the point? Because I don't have the cash.
I haven't got any money.
I haven't got any money. And so there's that knock-on effect too, that the most innovative players in the UK economy are struggling to get their ideas into reality because the money is late coming through.
And that leads into my next question was, and what about the entrepreneur or founder individually? The impact there. We see a trend that we very much see is that business owners, entrepreneurs, founders pay themselves last, and we always try and kind of advocate, look, you've got to pay yourself. You've got to pay yourself first, and it's partly a cultural thing. You want to make sure you paid everybody else, and then whatever is left at the bottom, you kind of take for yourself, drawings with the end of it. But actually, you need to treat yourself as an important payment within your company account, and you can't pay yourself late. So you've got to have these awkward conversations to facilitate that as a founder, right?
Yeah, but what we saw in those figures is that people are stopping paying their own salary. But then, of course, that has one of the recessions, and I think it was 1990, we were seeing 1,000 small businesses a week go to the wall. Now, as a result of that, about 76,000 homes were repossessed.
Wow!
In several years around about that. Now, that is hugely detrimental to everybody. That's detrimental not just to the founder, but to the family.
Yeah.
Then you think about those small businesses. They will have, they may have 3-4 employees. They may have 20 employees. But if you're running smaller firms, these are your friends. You've been working with them for a long time. They work in the local communities that you work in. And I'll never forget somebody saying to me coming up to last Christmas, we have 25 employees. I can't pay them. And that is 25 families that I can't sleep at night because I'm worried about the knock-on effect on those families. And actually, this is the local community. So every one of those families that isn't getting paid, it's not just them, but it's who they shop with. It's the small businesses in the local area. So the ripple effect is absolutely huge.
It really is.
Even though you're talking about one small business, you're talking about several families, several local businesses being impacted. And, the social value that you create for a local economy then has gone as well.
I think it's really interesting, actually, that we hear when we see news, and that I find it kind of shocking, but maybe it's so pervasive that it's so ubiquitous that it's not news anymore about late payments. We see news about businesses going under and how many jobs at risk, and everyone understands that impact. Everyone understands if a big company closes and 200 jobs goes, everyone understands the risk to the local economy, to the geographic area, to the families. People understand that on a human level, but the kind of the multitude, the millions of small businesses that there are out there, we seem to not be quite, even as small business owners ourselves, not quite connected to how much a part of a community we really are. And I think that's really important when you approach these discussions about payment terms, to remember that you are an integral part of society and community, more so than the big businesses maybe, because you're all working together, supporting each other, and making things tick and move along. Lifeblood is a phrase that I used far too much at the start of the pandemic about small businesses.
But it is true.
Yeah.
It's the micro businesses that are the lifeblood.
Yeah.
But that came through in the pandemic, certainly at the beginning of the pandemic, when more people were going to their small local shops, because they were the ones that were really pulling out all the stops. They were being agile. They were changing their business models. They were delivering. They were doing takeaways. They were doing all sorts of things to stay afloat, but also to help the customers.
Yeah.
And there was that feeling that we would stick with that when the pandemic was over. Whether or not that actually remains the case, remains to be seen, because the pandemic isn't over yet.
No.
But but it would be really good to think that people had understood the value of all of that local social value that we're just talking about there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the reasons I love working with small and micro businesses, because they're inventive and scrappy, and they've got so much heart and they want to do it. So I've got a couple of questions coming kind of related to this, actually. So someone's asked, I'm a small transport driving business. I always feel awkward chasing clients on overdue invoices and arrears. How should I approach this, as I don't want to lose their custom? There it comes again. How do I approach someone not paying me on time? Do you really want their customer if they're not paying you on time?
Well, this is the question. And also, we tend to say to people going going for jobs and job interviews, one of the questions to ask is, how do you treat your small suppliers? Do you pay them early? Do you pay them on time? Because if you don't, then you're not going to treat me well as an employee. But that's not really answering the question. And the answer to that question is, it's extremely difficult. Because you're desperately worried about putting at risk the next piece of work, which is why if you can get it all in writing before you start, then you have something that you can say, look, this is what we agreed to.
Yeah.
Now, you agreed to pay me on time. The reason I'm chasing this is because I was led to believe that I would get this payment at this point. And therefore, I have got lots of plans that I have made. I've got people I have to pay.
I counted on this money coming in. I was going to spend it just like you were. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that sometimes it's really good to be honest and say, I've got 3 small businesses I'm not going to be able to pay if you don't pay me. And I've got 3 employees who won't get any wages this month. And this is about our mental health. It's very tough to do that.
It really is.
It's another reason why you need to build the relationship with the people who pay, because you want them to be in a position where they like you, they've got a relationship with you, and they don't want to go home for the weekend without making sure you've got your money.
Absolutely. I can't sleep if I know that we haven't paid somebody who needs it. It drives me mad. And so someone's
that caller, if you want to call us, we'll have that difficult conversation on your behalf.
There we are. Perfect.
Because you are now struggling with a late payment dispute, and we can help you with that.
So another one kind of linked to that, you mentioned about the importance of getting things in writing. And what I would say is most larger companies use purchase order numbers, PO numbers, and that you have to put in the invoice. Any conversations you have around your payment terms should be attached to that PO number and should be linked to their system. So if you've got the in writing and the PO number, that should help. Question
but
here
sometimes, Lucy, as well as I do, it can take quite a lot of work to chase the PO number.
Oh yeah, no, that's a whole other problem. So what happens? So someone's asked here, kind of linked to that. So what happens if I've forgotten to agree a payment date when I first made the sale? Where do you stand legally in that kind of sense?
Well, by default, you should be paid within 30 days. But of course, that's a really difficult one to argue because there's nothing in writing, so we don't know. We don't know the when. We haven't got any date trail that says, so where do we count the 30 days from? So again, it's another question as to how can we, make it as easy for yourself as possible to get paid. Try to get it in writing. But the other thing is that sometimes you think you've got a due date to be paid, but actually, if you look at the company's contract, because there may be, if there is a contract, it may say the payment date is 30 days after the due date.
Yeah.
So, there are all sorts of little amendments and clauses and whatever in a contract, even if it is written down, that you have to really guard against. But if you are, if there wasn't an agreement, you haven't been paid in 30 days, again, give us a call.
Fantastic. So, I'm kind of curious about how you see the impact of the pandemic and how that's had on payments. You mentioned it earlier about small businesses really stepping up, and I've said how great and scrappy they are. We all know the challenges that the businesses of all sizes have faced. Do you think that's exacerbated the issue?
It's interesting because some of the big businesses have pulled out all the stops, and I have heard about big businesses changing completely to pay their small suppliers, within even 7 days.
Wow.
Because they've understood the importance of keeping those suppliers. If you don't have the goods on the shelf, your customers can't buy them. So then you are beginning to struggle too. So there have been really good examples of great practice. Now, I was talking to somebody the other day who said we did that for our small suppliers. However, lots of our departments have come back to us now and said, look, we can't keep this up. The processes just simply aren't good enough to keep making these 7-day payments. Can we draw back a bit? And he has said, I have allowed them to draw back a bit, but my ambition is that everybody will get paid within 15 days. So there are really good practices going on out there. It has made bigger organizations look at their payment practices and think, can we improve this? There's been some utterly horrendous situations because firms that weren't getting paid themselves, they therefore couldn't pay their smaller suppliers. The smaller suppliers that are complaining to us are quite often complaining not about the big firms, but about companies more like the size of themselves.
Interesting.
Because they're concerned that they're in the same boat. And it's a race for who goes bust first. So I get my money from that smaller business quickly as I possibly can. So you can see all these dynamics happening. Some sectors are better than others. The legal sector say things have been horrendous. Obviously, there's all sorts of problems in the hospitality and events sectors and so on and so forth. And then the construction sector is another sector we don't deal with directly, but there are lots of clauses and amendments and so on in construction contracts that sometimes, have made it really difficult for everybody along the line to get paid. So there's all sorts of different situations and scenarios have emerged. But I think what has for me emerged is that people want to talk about this. There's so much conversation going on about how we change this culture now, and
which is great.
Build back the payment systems better.
I love it. Build back the payment systems better. So build back Baxa. Oh, that's terrible. Never mind. Regarding to that, relating to that question, then, what's your recommended approach when you're chasing a payment and then you get told by the company, look, we haven't been paid by our client, we can only pay you when we've been paid? That's very much obviously that's the crux of the problem. If you're being told that, what do you do? And I've seen another question pop up here. Should you have been should you credit check that person before you agree to supply? Where in the loop do we how do you face that? Because it's something you relate to as a small business. Look, I haven't been paid, I can't pay you. You're like, I know, I get it. It's but I need my money. How do you approach that?
Again, we need to approach everything before we sign up and before we agree to do the work. You see, we're back to square one again. Yes, you need to do your credit checks beforehand. Use the credit reference agencies. Think about whether or not a company has signed up to the prompt payment code to commit to paying small suppliers within 95 days. What about their payment practices reporting scheme? Because all that data is available. You could use all of that to check, is the company I'm about to do some work for likely to pay me on time?
Yeah.
Of course, that's not necessarily the guarantee, but at the same time, you're giving yourself a better chance. The problem for me is that if you are contracting with somebody to deliver goods, then it's up to you to make sure they get paid fairly. It's actually not really good enough to be saying, well, I haven't been paid yet.
Yeah.
I know in reality, that's how it works. But, but in effect, actually, the problem that you have got of not getting paid is yours to chase.
Yeah.
You need to be paying your small suppliers. But I have got caught out with this before because I have paid my small supplier. I have had a contract with them. I paid them within 7 days because that was my payment, how I committed to doing my payments. But then I've not been, and on two occasions, I've not been paid at all. So I've never got that money back. And you are carrying that risk that you won't get that money back. Those are really tough conversations to have. And again, give us a call. Let us try and help you through that.
So just so people know, because sometimes I think it's hard to approach this conversation when you don't know where you stand, you don't know what your rights are. What measures are there in place to protect small businesses from poor payment practices? What have we got in our arsenal already? What can we call upon to say, actually, you're in breach of this, or you should be adopting this? What have we got that we can use if we're finding ourselves a bit stuck? What already exists?
Well, we've got the Enterprise Act that set up the Small Business Commissioner's Office and set up the dispute resolution scheme. So come and talk to us. Ultimately, there are lots of gaps. We know that. We don't deal with construction companies, for instance, and it is very difficult to get a resolution. Sometimes you end up in the small claims process through the civil courts. Sometimes you end up in alternative dispute resolution schemes. The worry that people have is that will cost too much money and that therefore we don't want to engage with that. So ultimately, the best thing to do is to try to have that conversation that will make people understand, or let us help you forming that conversation, having that conversation, if possible, taking up your case, that dispute on your behalf. We probably don't have enough protection, but we have to think about, all the way along the way, the court, right to the court point of court. That is built into protection for payments. It's not perfect.
So question,
do what you can possibly do at the outset to cover yourself. And if you were to end up in court, you're going to need to have all that stuff in writing anyway to be able to prove the fact that there was that agreement in the first place.
So related to that, a question from Deborah here says, I have payment terms on my invoices and in my contracts. Do I still need to issue statements, etc., before looking to do a letter before action or court proceedings?
Yeah.
I had to threaten court to get payment, and then the company just blamed their accountant. So what's the process there? Yeah, you do.
Yeah, yes, at every step along the way. Make
Yeah.
sure you follow the internal complaints procedures with the company that you're dealing with, because courts don't want to see if you haven't gone through the whole procedure in the first place. Make sure you do issue all the letters. You will get help to do that from your accountants.
Yeah.
And and of course, part of the problem is that small businesses think about their own accountant as simply helping them through their annual tax. They don't think about them as being able to help them to go through processes and get paid and help them chase up payments. And accountants can be extremely useful for that.
We can. Yeah, we really can.
I'm giving you a plug. I fell into that trap.
Thank you ever so much. No, so I mean, this kind of leads on to how digital tools can help, and I think that, you know, like we talked about, you know, the 80s versus now, and digital tools, especially with kind of the annoying compliance stuff like invoices, reminders, making sure it goes to the right person or copied into another person, and issuing statements and all that kind of stuff, that can be really easily done via technology. So, you know, we've mentioned accountants being great and useful people, but they will quite often provide you with tools to manage this. You can automate chase ups after 30 days. You can make sure that you chase for missing information. You can make sure it goes to the right person, and then you can through a lot of invoicing systems, you can make it super easy for someone to pay you by letting them pay directly from the invoice. So those are some digital tools that can really help. I think also in the era of instant payments, backs, you know, card machines and things like that, how can digital tools kind of help the conversation at the outset? As a small business, have you got power to say, I want to be paid like this, please pay me like this?
I think you've hit on the nail on the head there. It does all those things that you have said, and it's absolutely terrific. But don't forget, there are still probably 2.5 million small businesses that aren't digital, and
absolutely.
So don't have the digital tools. And as somebody said to me the other day, she said, I run my business by smartphone, but the problem is I have to do it standing in a field. You know, so there's still an infrastructure issue.
Yeah.
If you can get digital and you can get the tools, they are very easy to use.
Yeah.
So don't be put off by the fact that you feel you don't have the skills.
Yes.
What they don't do is that bit at the front, help you negotiate the contract.
Yeah.
And I have talked to the tech companies, and I am saying to them, can we get something in place that will help those difficult conversations, both at the front end and at the back end if you've not got paid when you should be paid. And they are taking that on board, I think, and thinking about how could you make and I hate this phrase, a complete end-to-end journey.
End-to-end, one-stop shop, that's the other one I hate.
Tech would cover. Yes, well,
that would be
what that means, but that would be really useful for helping people. And of course, we've got Making Tax Digital coming up. I know it's been pushed back for a year from most businesses.
But don't delay. Act like it's going to act this year.
Don't delay. You and I have said this before. Start thinking about that now. The government's Help to Grow digital scheme is coming. Well, it's there. It's waiting for applications from firms that need help to go digital. There are other organisations like Citizens Online and Digital Boost and so on that can help with that. Can really help you. And somebody else told me the other day that he is saving half a day a week.
Wow.
Simply by having gone to using digital tools, and that half a day a week, as he says, he can put into looking for contracts with customers who will pay him better than some of his past customers.
Absolutely. It will, and it can be really intimidating kind of thinking about going digital now, but if you can, you've got a bit of a grace period now, it's not till 2024. If you can start making that transition bit by bit, by the time it becomes mandatory, you're way ahead of the game. And like you said, hopefully you've got an extra half day a week to negotiate additional contracts. Somebody has asked here, then, I feel like the payment culture is changing due to the effects on mental health. I certainly, I echo that idea. I think during the pandemic, there's been a much more conversation around mental health as there should be. It says, is it best to be transparent as possible with how the late payments are affecting my mental health as a small business owner? How do you feel about kind of being honest and upfront about that?
I think this is a personal choice, and you should never divulge anything that you are not comfortable with divulging. But equally, I do think that people don't get it unless they've been in that position themselves. And you know, we have had conversations on behalf of people and said, this is affecting this person's mental health. They are really struggling with depression. And the answer has always been, oh, I had no idea. I will do my best to sort this as quickly as possible. A classic example, though, was one woman who came to us who had nothing with which to feed her children over the weekend and no money in the bank. So she had been told, it'll arrive by then, it'll arrive by then, it'll arrive by then. By Friday, she had called us and said, I can't feed the kids over the weekend. Now, the financial controller of that company said, oh my God, I had absolutely no idea. He said, I am transferring the money personally now. Get me the account details straight away. And it's quite surprising, I think, the lack of understanding of the impact that it can have on a small business owner not getting payments when you have been told that they will be coming in. And so I think sometimes that honesty really helps.
Yeah, I think there's a dissonance as well. Like, you know, we even see it. It's you know, as accountants, we deal with accounts and tax constantly day after day. So you can become a little bit, you know, maybe blind to how scary a brown envelope landing on a doormat can feel to somebody. If you're
you run a small business, most of these people haven't.
Exactly.
They've come into a big firm.
Yes.
They've moved into another bigger firm and a bigger firm. You know, they've become institutionalized. This is the process. This is how we do it. It's how we've always done it.
Yeah.
And they're not thinking about what impact it would have if you were in a small business.
Yeah.
They've not been freelance. They've not run small businesses. You have to allow, I think, for the fact that people don't get out of bed in the morning to do a bad job. They quite often do a bad job, but usually because of incompetence and lack of understanding.
Not because they're choosing to. They're not choosing to, you know, kind of withhold payments from, but they're going, well, my job is to pay on this date, and this is when I do it. And if you didn't get it in by this date, then I push it to this month. They're following what they're told to do. I think sometimes having that empathy with to be able to push process is different. We're running short on.
If you're one of those payment persons listening, come on, tell their bosses, we've got to change this. This is what might happen. You know, manage upwards.
Absolutely, yeah, I love that. Manage upwards. So we're just going to kind of start closing out now. Can this issue ever be eradicated, and if so, how? Big question, but how do we eradicate this issue?
Time, and saying the same things over and over and over again. Look, it took us 20 years to get seatbelts. It took us 20 years to stop drink driving. Ultimately we had to legislate. I would like to think we're not going to have to do this. I'm talking to the big businesses saying, come on, change the culture, think about your ethical behavior, what the investors want to see, think about how you attract really good people to work with you, and make sure you treat your small businesses, your small suppliers really fairly. And we're talking to the small businesses saying, come on, you can be confident, you are the talent, get out there and put your own payment terms to the company before they put the payment terms to you and negotiate. Have the confidence in your own talent to negotiate. Right. And then we're talking to the tech companies, come on, help us change things, give us better tools, give us more tools that will help those small businesses. And I think that we are beginning to see a real groundswell of opinion that this has to change.
So lastly, final wrap up then, in our last minute then, three key takeaways from this session. If people had to go away now with 3 key takeaways, what would they be?
Do everything you possibly can to make it possible to get paid quickly. Use the right apps if you possibly can, and other technology that will help you with the admin, because they leave you much more time to run your business and chase up further contracts. And have the confidence in your own talents and expertise, because you are crucial to the businesses that you are bringing your expertise and talent to. And just, and say no if it's going to take 4 months to pay you. There will be 2 other contracts that will come along and pay you in 30 days.
Yeah, I mirror that. I say, my 3 key takeaways are: have that conversation up front, no matter how awkward it is. Secondly, learn how to have an awkward conversation. If someone hasn't paid you, learn how to have that awkward conversation. The more you do it, the less uncomfortable it is. It's always really clumsy and awkward the first time. The words feel strange in your mouth and you're shaking and you're a bit scared. By the time you've done it 5 or 6 times, it feels a lot more natural. And finally, advocate for yourself. You know, as Liz said many times, you are the talent. There will be other contracts. You don't have to don't fear turning something down. This is not your only shot. You don't just get one shot. So don't fear it and do that. And I think that probably quite neatly wraps us up. And I'm going to thank you, Liz, for your time today. I'm going to hand back over to Chloe.
Thank you.
Liz and Lucy, thank you so much for joining us this morning into this afternoon. It's been a really valuable session with lots of great questions from our audience. So thank you very much for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us.
You're very welcome, Chloe.
And Chloe, I would say gained by experience.
Yes.
I've made all the mistakes. Probably
Same.
over.
Same.
Fantastic. Well, we'll be back for series 5 of the Lightbulb sessions on the 28th of October. If there is anything you'd like to catch up on from today's session in the meantime, we'll be sending out a replay of this recording later on today. You can find replays and future sessions at www.lightbulb-sessions.haysummit.com. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again, Liz and Lucy. Goodbye, everybody.